Please welcome Head of Global Hospitality and Strategy, Airbnb, Chip Conley, and co-founder and editor-in-chief, Skift, Jason Clampet.
Thank you for coming back from lunch and making it across the street there where we don't have a traffic light. I hope that everybody survived. So we're here with Chip Conley. A few things that sets him apart. One, he's one of the few men to wear a tie on stage, which I think it's
pretty unusual.
Yeah, so I think it's only the first time somebody from Airbnb has tied a tie.
Yeah.
So I think it's pretty impressive. So
that's why they hired me, is to help teach how to tie ties.
No more clip-ons, Brian.
Yeah.
But Chip is one of the only two people to grace our stage a second time. He was here the first year in 2014 when we did a one-day event, and we had a great conversation, and so it's great to have him back. It's also great to have Airbnb here on stage. I think that I'd say they're kind of the elephant in the room, except they're the elephant that we've talked about. And so I'm not sure they're not quite a 900-pound gorilla yet, and they're somewhere between elephant and gorilla. So let's talk a bit about that. So when we're going to talk about hospitality today. For those of you who don't know, Chip has a deep background in hotels, started his own chain of hotels, which I mispronounced the first year, Joie de Vivre Hotels.
Exactly.
And he still has stakes in hotels. We had Amar on stage yesterday, and I know you've worked with him a bit even on modern projects. So he's somebody who has his foot in both worlds, and I think has an understanding of hospitality that few have right now. And you could argue that he may have all the answers, and so we're going to try to get all
Actually, I have all the questions.
Oh, great. So you can start asking me the questions. No. So let's just start with the basic. What do normal people think of when you use the word hospitality now? What's the modern concept?
So I saw Danny Meyer. Danny Meyer is a great restaurateur here in New York. Started Shake Shack, but he's also known for his high-end restaurants here. He had a conference, and I spoke at his conference this morning and had dinner with him last night. He defines it, and so I'm going to give him credit for this, that service is something it's a technique that's offered, usually from a manual, and usually from the head. And hospitality is something that gives the person who receives it a feeling, and it usually comes from the heart. So I guess I would say that at least within Airbnb in the 3.5 years I've been there, I have defined hospitality for the company and then for our global hosts as a generosity of spirit that comes from the heart. And it's an open heart approach to service for people who are opening their homes.
That's a great idea. But eventually you need a manual for the heart. Do you go back to service? How do you then pass that down into actionable items?
So I've been lucky enough that I've been there at Airbnb a long time now, so in the Airbnb years. So I've been there 3.5 years, and of the over 100 million guest arrivals I've seen about, I've been in the company for at least 80% of that time. So I've seen us evolve. When I arrived, we didn't have hospitality standards. So there weren't a set of standards that we defined as being the gold standard of what we expect our hosts to do. We spent time talking to our guests and then created 9 hospitality standards, and then started evaluating our hosts based upon that, and then started both giving a carrot and a stick, a carrot being like the Superhost program, which is our best hosts in the world. About 8% of our hosts fit that profile, and then the stick being we take off the platform tens of thousands of hosts every month now who don't meet minimum standards. And so we sort of moved in the direction of a little bit being like the big hotel chains in the sense that we do have minimum standards, and they're defined really by what the guest tells us are the moments of truth that are most important to them.
Was the stick something hard for people to get used to?
Well, I think, within the company, we are what's in the tech world. So I'm not a tech person. I've lived in the Bay Area a long time, but I have zero tech experience. I'm a bit of a technophobe. So I didn't really know what a global network effects business is. Anybody here, how many people know like what that, so not too many. So what a global network effects business is like Facebook. Facebook wouldn't do well if people weren't going on there all together. Airbnb wouldn't do well if there wasn't a two-sided marketplace. And so when I first joined, we were so focused on how do we get, open more listings in certain parts of the world where we weren't very strong yet and we had some competition, that the primary focus was quantity. But within about 6 months to a year, we realized, I think pretty quickly, that if we could improve quality, and quality continued to go up, and we can talk about that in a little while, then once you get to a certain size, quality leads to quantity. Because if the guest experience is moderately good or getting better over time, then more guests come to you, and therefore more hosts come to your site, to your marketplace, and then you have a network effect. And so we clearly, at this point, are more focused on quality than quantity, because frankly, it continues to keep the engine running.
With the focus on quality and other programs you've rolled out recently that are, I'd say, more of a professionalization in terms of giving hosts more tools or even giving users more tools to discover things that are right for them. So some of the business travel programs that you've done. What's the worry of that going too far from the original intent or kind of the original concept of more of a, hey, this is a unique local experience that you can have?
I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I mean, as a boutique hotelier who created 52 boutique hotels, I learned over time that the best thing we could do is to professionalize the experience and create some standards for what a boutique hotel offers. But if you lost the localization of it, you lost the soul. And so I actually don't think we've lost the soul there. And we even do ongoing reviews and discussions with our guest community about how they feel about the professionalization of the site. But the professionalization of the site for someone who's a business traveler, there's certain things you need as a business traveler. And we have over 300,000 corporate accounts now on Airbnb, companies like Morgan Stanley, Google, et cetera, and they want certain things. So there's some certain things that we have to have a higher standard for a business travel ready listing than for a standard listing. So I don't think we've lost it. At the end of the day, you can't manufacture authenticity. You can't franchise it either. And so we, as we've gotten bigger, are more and more focused on how do we create that environment where our hosts actually are the ones delivering the authenticity. It's not Airbnb who's doing that.
Within that and thinking of, business travel ready and things like that, we talked briefly this summer about, I was staying at an Airbnb and I wanted to be chef's ready.
Yeah.
And I got there and it was this
I get feedback from great people on the road. You're in Madrid, right?
Yeah, it was this wonderful kitchen, amazing, and none of the knives worked. And I was talking to friends and they're like, if you go to the beach, it should be beach ready and this and some kind of certification. And that seems like a natural progression, something you can charge more for, makes, allows you to distinguish more on the site. What's the, is that something that there's a worry that takes away from the core experience? Or?
No, I think there's Barry Schwartz wrote a book a few years ago, The Paradox of Choice. And the larger you get, the more you have risk in making it complicated for your customer to figure out what they want to choose. And I think that what's really important for us at our size now is for us to have differentiators beyond just the filters of amenities, so that you could have a family-friendly listing. You could have listings. Our business travel listings are a good example of that. So I think over time, defining the kind of psychographic or demographic of a customer and then helping match them to the right listing is really critical. And frankly, as a data company, we're a hospitality company, but we're also a technology company. Because we actually can track you, so over time we know you want great knives, and if we can make sure that we know which are our hosts that actually have a culinary set within their home, we could then make sure that when you go to Buenos Aires, we're actually going to only show you listings that actually have that.
Flip side then, how do you balance the kind of the whimsy which Greg, our senior editor, has been up here a few times. He just loves the whole no frills, kind of old school Airbnb experience with, you wouldn't use this term, but more of the corporatization, the standardization of it, and being able to deliver both things at once. Is that possible?
I just think as a boutique hotelier, I think of Airbnb as just the logical global extension of what a boutique hotel does. And the Schrager, the Kimpton, the Joie de Vivres of the world, over time realized that as they got bigger, they had to get better at the standard side. How do you deliver on something? I don't think that the boutique hotels or Airbnb can ever be as consistent as a chain hotel, because the chain hotels are all about predictability and consistency. So I don't think we should try that. I think what we try to do is create dependability. So one of the 9 standards we use for our hosts is accuracy. And how accurate is the listing, and how does the guest feel like the accuracy of the listing matches what they experienced, because disappointment equals expectations minus reality. So if we can actually help our hosts write better, more accurate listings, one of the things I've told our hosts is, as just an exercise, and a lot of our hosts are doing this now, is in your listing, within the first or second paragraph, tell your potential guests 3 things that people love about your place, and then 2 things that some people don't like about your place. Now, a hotel would never do that. But for an individual Airbnb host, being that specific and that candid, actually, that level of transparency creates trust. And at the end of the day, Airbnb is a platform of trust. And if you can accelerate the process of a prospective guest trusting you, that's better. And so that's part of it, is just making sure that we help a host, since we're not going to have consistency. Dependability goes back to just the idea of, does the listing accurately depict what a person's going to get?
So, you mentioned, you created 52 hotels back at Joie de Vivre. One of the first ones was the Phoenix Hotel, which you said kind of the concept was, what if Rolling Stone magazine became a hotel? So how do you incorporate the idea of a hospitality experience like that? And you have your own word for it, I think, identity refreshment. In something like Airbnb.
So just to recap the idea, and that first hotel, the Phoenix, I still own 30 years later after I bought it. The idea was I think that what makes a boutique hotel unique is something that feels like the soul of the hotel speaks to you, such that the personality of the hotel feels like your perfect habitat. So 52 hotels later, every single time we created a hotel, it was based upon a magazine and 5 adjectives. So that first hotel, the Phoenix in the Tenderloin, a rock and roll hotel, was based upon Rolling Stone and was funky, irreverent, adventurous, cool, and young at heart. And everything we did to create that hotel, from the design to the staff, had to come back to those 5 adjectives. So we took that, and what we actually found out over time is the people who fell in love with the hotel would use those adjectives to describe themselves. So the boutique hotel was an identity refreshment. It's almost like you are where you sleep, not you are what you eat, you are where you sleep. So for our Airbnb hosts, we've used that exact same method to train our hosts. So hosts, many of our hosts who go through our training programs and come to our Airbnb Open, which is our big annual conference with hosts and guests from over 100 countries who show up. Last year it was in Paris, this year it's in LA. They learned about the 5 adjectives and how their listing, they actually have to come up with 5 adjectives that define it, then make sure that the amenities and services and the decor fits that. And then also, we've actually had them do something that I did in a few of my hotels, which was within the first 5 minutes after you've checked into the hotel, or in the first 5 minutes in checking into the hotel, how are your 5 senses stimulated in a positive way using those 5 adjectives? So if you were at a hotel like the Hotel Vitale, one of my hotels in San Francisco, or a Joie de Vivre hotel, a hotel that I built, was sort of more of a tranquil, a natural hotel. So you might have Enya playing in the lobby, you might have an aromatherapy candle, you might have a basket full of fruit on the front desk. So the key is to have elements of the experience, especially around the 5 senses, that influences almost subconsciously or unconsciously the guest experience. And literally, we are teaching that psychology to 1.5 million hosts in 191 countries and in 32 different languages. So that's the part that's really fun about this job, is how do you take the idea of democratizing hospitality, which is really what Airbnb is doing, and allow your host to take it up a notch and maybe even deliver an experience that's even better than you might have gotten in a fine hotel.
In terms of democratizing that, is that really something that can be taught on such a small level?
I think that's a great question. So I would say the number one thing I've learned in this data company. I joined the company at age 52. I'm turn 56 next month. And I'd never been in a tech company before. I didn't know what it meant to ship product. I didn't know all this lingo. And I was supposed to be the mentor for the 3 founders. And I was literally the intern trying to figure out this tech language. But one of the things I think I learned early was the service and hospitality industry needs to look at what's the feedback loop. And the hospitality industry generally has a broken feedback loop. We outsourced it to Steve, who's here later this afternoon at TripAdvisor. Meaning, generally speaking, our hotel guests, and I still own 14 hotels, our hotel guests don't give us direct feedback. They don't fill out the online survey. Maybe 2 to 10% of our guests fill out the online survey based upon which hotel company you're talking about. And then if that goes to Bethesda or whichever headquarters, and it goes back to the general manager of the hotel, and maybe the staff sees it, but it's never personalized. So how does the actual front desk host or clerk or a bartender or a maid ever know what impact they had on a guest? In Airbnb, 70 to 75% of our hosts and guests review each other. 70 to 75%, and it all happens within 14 days. Within about a year after I was at Airbnb, we remade the review system. Made it more candid, we just did a bunch of tweaks to it to make it better. It made it better. More people actually did reviews. And because the host gets that review almost very soon after someone stays there, it's almost instantaneous feedback to the person who actually can make a difference. And they realize if they don't make a difference, their search rankings will go down, they won't become a super host, et cetera, et cetera. So if I could say one piece of advice, you're right. It's very hard to scale education to a collection of people, most of whom are doing this very part-time as an Airbnb host. But today, our guest satisfaction survey, which is based upon NPS, Net Promoter Score, which is the main one for the hotel industry, is 50% higher than the hotel industry. So Airbnb's guest satisfaction score, based upon an independent outside source, and this has been out for almost a year now, it's been that high, is 50% higher than the hotel industry. That is part of the reason that Airbnb continues to grow. You will hear horror stories about someone staying on Airbnb, just like I used to hear horror stories of people staying in boutique hotels, because the standard deviation of the experience is much greater than in a traditional chain hotel. But the great news with a data company is over time, we get to understand you and a host well enough, and we throw hosts off the platform if they're not doing a good job. And we understand what you like, and over time, we just nudge you properly into the kinds of places that we think are going to be right for you. And so it's been a fascinating experience to see how do you match technology and hospitality in this way.
Mm-hmm. On the stage yesterday, Amar from Standard said some wonderful things about Airbnb, and then he said, well, they can't bring people together like hotels can in a sense. He was giving an example of Monday night, we had a great party there, and afterwards people were watching the debates, and people gathered there. And it was an interesting thought to me because it's almost the flip of the belonging promise of Airbnb, where there are those personal one-on-one relationships that can exist between a host or a manager and a guest, but the lack of the public space and things like that. So what's the, how do you compete with a great lobby where everybody gathers in a wonderful bar?
Listen, first of all, Amar and Liz and all the people in Standard and Bunkhouse they're like my favorite hotel group right now. I think the world of them. I think they do really innovative things. And I actually don't think we're here to replace that. I think that's one of the beautiful things between, and maybe over time, there can be ways for Airbnb to partner and collaborate more with the hotel industry such that we can encourage our guests to go to hotels.
So you're saying you're going to become an OTA?
No, we're not becoming an OTA. I'm not. How did you get to that? I don't know.
That's what they want to hear.
No, we're not. No. No. But I think the idea that we encourage people, there's a hotelier in Madrid, Kike Sarasola, who has a roommate.
Yep.
And he created B-Mate. So he's got Roommate, which is 25, 26 boutique hotels around the world. And in the locations of about 12 to 15 of them, these hotels, within about 3 or 4 kilometers, he has created B-Mate, which is their form of Airbnb, which is getting a bunch of homes in the area. And what he said is, it's symbiotic. The Airbnb, or the home staying guest wants that lobby and some of the services that the hotel can provide. So I do think there can be some more symbiotic relationship over time. I think you should also keep an eye on what we announce 2 months from now at the Airbnb Open.
Okay.
Because it will be, we have some things coming along.
Is there something you want to lay out?
No, I can't say anything now.
Nobody's going to say anything.
No, but you'll see, what we will be giving people more and more opportunities to connect.
Yeah. I guess that can take us to I was going to ask you about Accor Hotels and One Fine Stay. One Fine Stay had been working with Hyatt, then Accor grabbed them up to do something similar to that. And Accor has been kind of on the forefront of doing both the relationship with sharing economy like companies.
They own the Oasis Collection.
And then also opening their platform for independent hotels to book. Yep. Is that kind of the future of hospitality and all its many different manifestations?
If you go 30,000 feet in the air and you look at the history of disruption in hospitality, you might start with timeshare. You might look at boutique hotels. You might look at home sharing. There's actually been a very common life cycle, and that is it was typically started by someone outside the industry, by a pioneer, so to speak, or a series of pioneers. At first, the established industry, ignored it and then ridiculed it, and then sometimes fought it. And over time, once people realized that there was an unmet need that disruption was addressing, then all of a sudden the big chains jumped on the bandwagon. If you look at the timeshare industry today, it is predominantly the big players are the global hotel companies. Ian Schrager now works for Marriott, or has for a few years. Kimpton is owned by Intercontinental, etc. So I think what you will see, Accor is just, at Hyatt and Accor were just the two of the first hotel chains to sort of say, yes, home sharing is a long-term trend. It's addressing an unmet need that goes a long time back. The first home swapping site was in 1953. It wasn't a site, it was just a company. So in 1953, home swapping started. Yeah. 1995, VRBO and Craigslist both started. Craigslist was how do you rent a separate bedroom in your home if you need a roommate. And VRBO was, vacation rentals, second homes. So I think the idea that there's a need was there. Airbnb came along and packaged it beautifully and created a trust platform that actually allowed it to grow to where it is today. And so I think that, yes, over time, there's going to be a way for the big hotel companies to figure out how to get into this business. What's different on this one versus, say, timeshare and boutique hotels is that Airbnb's value is now to a level where, I don't think they can buy us.
Right. The global hotel chains are making great progress with tech innovations, keyless entry, checking in on your mobile phone. We had Fritz up here from Starwood talking earlier today about all the things he dreams about at night that he didn't get to do. Do these technology things that it doesn't seem as if Airbnb can match, is that something of concern for you? Is that something where you see, oh man, I wish that improves the guest experience so much, I wish that's something we could offer?
Yeah, I have two very different opinions on this one. My gut level reaction is, this is the hospitality business, and if your concierge is an app, your front desk doesn't exist because you're actually checking into your room on your phone. Your housekeeper or your maid is a robot, and your sightseeing guide is an Oculus Rift VR machine. We have, in essence, created a no human connection hospitality experience. And I actually believe that great technology enhances human connection as opposed to the opposite. So I don't believe that the hospitality industry is on the right path in terms of gadgets. On the other hand, okay, so that's one side, and then my other side, my cognitive dissonance on the other side says, things that help create a more efficient experience that do not replace the ability to have human connection are good ideas. So I do think some of those are good ideas, and I think that, frankly, for Airbnb, one of the things we can learn from the hotel industry is how to create efficient delivery of service, which is a harder thing for us to do given our sort of disparate, scaled nature of our hospitality that we deliver.
Right.
So I do think over time we are talking to companies in our ecosystem that can provide services. I mean, the most classic and easy one is digital locks. Yeah, it'd be nice to have a digital lock so I don't have to have somebody give me a key and I can just know, okay, here's the combo, and I just get straight into the home that way.
Yeah. I remember we were at a conference, Skift team, and we had to call the woman in England to find her key because it wasn't under the thing where it was.
Very old school.
Yes.
Yeah.
Last question. What's one thing the hotel industry can learn from Airbnb, and vice versa? What's one thing Airbnb can learn from the hotel industry right now?
Well, I think the thing we can learn from the hotel industry is the efficient delivery of service on a consistent basis. I mean, the hotel industry has built itself on that. I still stay in hotels. You know, I stay on Airbnb as well. If it's a 2 or 3 night stay, I typically stay in a hotel. If it's 3 nights or longer, I'm usually on Airbnb because, for those who don't know it, Airbnb is, to me, I think the best way to describe us is that we should be dominant in the 1 month to 3 month category, and that we should sort of own that globally. And I think we already do. In New York here alone, 58% of our room nights in New York are people staying a week or longer in New York. So just 58% of our room nights in here in New York are people staying a week or longer. I think the efficient delivery of service is something we need to learn. And I think the hotel industry has done a great job of teaching us that. I think the best thing that the hotel industry can learn from Airbnb is that 25 years ago, the idea of a revenue manager was sort of curious to many of us old school hotel people. It was like, why do I need a revenue manager? Back then, you just figured out you had a weekday rate, and you had a weekend rate, and you had a suite rate, but you didn't have the complexity of rate structures that we have today because you didn't have the distribution alternatives, the Expedias, the Pricelines, et cetera. So I think where the hotel industry is way behind and Airbnb is way ahead is in data scientists. So I think data scientists represent what revenue managers represented 25 years ago. And why is that? Well, if you have a lot of data scientists, and we have about 100 at Airbnb, you are both able to better find the right customers for you, but most importantly, and I think this is a huge differentiator long-term, is personalization and customization. When you have data and you can analyze it properly, and you have data architecture that actually helps you deliver this, you can understand that when someone's coming to stay with you in Paris, October 1st through the 8th, and they're a vegetarian who loves yoga, who loves French wine, art and architecture, and Edith Piaf, you can actually literally give them an itinerary, and you can help them be in the right neighborhood and have the right things to do, and literally maybe even meet people in Paris who have similar interests. And if you can do that, and the only way you can do that is through your data structure and through data science, then you have delivered something better than maybe Amazon, Netflix, or Spotify, who today are the gold standard for customization and personalization. And to me, the thing that we don't, as an industry, I'm speaking as a hotelier here now, we talk a big game about it, but we have not figured it out. And just because someone stayed in a Marriott one time, and then a Marriott Courtyard the next, and then a JW Marriott the next time, doesn't tell you anything other than the price point and the location. And so I think the key is to figure out how over time do we get really smart as an industry around data science, because it will allow us to personalize and customize the choices that our customers are looking for.
Excellent. Well, thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you.